Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today's first story is a callback to a recent BTT viewer question about the validity of directors' claims that they would not have or will not make a movie without a certain lead actor. Because that's what David Fincher has just done. He has told Sony that he will not make the Steve Jobs biography without Christian Bale in the lead role. Now, in short, when I first answered that BTT viewer question, I said there were two scenarios. One is if a project is just good, then it seems silly to shelve it because one person says no. Sure, the replacement actor might not do the exact same thing and probably won't do the exact same thing as it was imagined that first choice would do, but still, they'll make it their own, they'll do something compelling, the material should go forward. However, if it's like a star vehicle that isn't really that well written, it's okay, it's mediocre, but it only exists for that talent, and that talent has the ability to maybe raise the material because they're so well cast, then I can see shelving it. Now, you might think that the Steve Jobs biography goes in the first category because it's an important story to be told. But I think David Fincher finds himself in a unique situation because of that Ashton Kutcher biography that already came out. Now, of course, not a lot of people saw it, but still, it was very highly publicized and it's very much been in the public consciousness. So I think even if people didn't see the film, they're like, been there, done that, they've already made this movie. And I have to say that Ashton Kutcher did a surprisingly good job in the role, much better than I thought he would. So I think that any actor who's cast has to contend with that a little bit. So David Fincher really needs to find someone who is so compelling and so highbrow, so A-list, that it reinvigorates people's interest in the material. They think, well, maybe I should go and see this one. And I think Christian Bale does that. And I think that this will probably happen. I mean, Sony has to try and talk Bale into doing this. I think the discussion probably is just beginning now after David Fincher made this declaration. But I think this is not only a great choice for Fincher, not only do I think it's a great choice for the movie, but I think it's a really great choice for Christian Bale. Post-Batman, he is working very hard to define himself as an artiste. He has that Oscar from The Fighter. He got the nomination for American Hustle, and I think he can really do something with this role. Not only does he look a lot like Steve Jobs, which I think is something that Ashton Kutcher had to combat a little bit. A lot of you feel he did look like Steve Jobs. I feel that Christian Bale is a much better match physically. But as we learned from, the actual biography, the official biography that the Fincher film will be based on, and if you saw the Jobs film, is that Steve Jobs was a very complex, dynamic individual. So I think it's going to be a great role for any actor and something that Bale can really sink his teeth into, which while at the same time will be commercially viable. That's something that Bale's having a little bit of a problem with or has in the past. American Hustle ended up doing quite well at the box office, but that was an ensemble piece. Here he'd have a chance to be front and center as the star and could potentially get another Oscar. I think he would almost certainly get a nomination if he were to take on this role, considering it was a Fincher project. Also, adding further prestige is this is the Social Network team. Scott Rudin is producing, and they did a fabulous job with an equally, contentious character with Mark Zuckerberg. So I think to apply that same team to Steve Jobs is, I think really fascinating. And I love the Social Network, so I'd be very curious to see what happens here. And I would say that the Christian Bale casting is as strong as the Jesse Eisenberg casting in that first film. So, and they actually, they missed the boat with Oscars for the Social Network. It ended up not being the frontrunner. The King's Speech beat it out. So maybe on round two, Fincher and Rudin will have better luck. Certainly, I think Steve Jobs is a more sympathetic figure, even though he did have, rubbed some people the wrong way. I think that might, help the film. And also, maybe they'll make a trilogy. This will be like their technology biography series. So, who do you think should be the third person after Zuckerberg and Jobs? All right, so that's the first story of the day. And we spend a lot of time here talking about actors who have been cast. But two big stories about directors being, cast to a film have also broken this week. The first one, a lot of you were very interested in. I got a lot of people tweeting me and emailing me about this, and that's that Doug Liman is in final talks to direct Splinter Cell with Tom Hardy. That's obviously the Tom Clancy video game. It's quite popular video game series, and it's another instance of another video game movie coming to Hollywood that is a little more highbrow. I think Need for Speed almost started this a little bit. We've had like the very B, C-level films like Resident Evil up until this point. Doom comes to mind, with The Rock. That really just kind of came and went. But I think that we're getting a little bit better talent attached to these films, and they're having therefore a better shot at the box office. And Doug Liman is certainly a solid choice. I don't know if he's the best choice. For instance, he did the first Bourne movie, but I think Paul Greengrass really took over that franchise. And I think Paul Greengrass would be a great choice for Splinter Cell. I think that Doug Liman, he directed also, in addition to the first Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and also the upcoming Edge of Tomorrow, that Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt sci-fi futuristic war film. But I think he has a lighter touch. I think that he'll play into maybe some of Tom Hardy's weaknesses. I think Tom Hardy really has to fight against his looks, and I think that Doug Liman is the kind of director who will play up his looks. I mean, we don't need another, I think it was This Is War, that movie that Tom Hardy was in with Chris Pine and Reese Witherspoon, which was like two CIA agents are in love with the same woman. Haha, hilarious. And I have to say, there's a paintball sequence in that film which is hilarious and made me laugh out loud. But the rest of the movie is pretty sad. And so I would hate to see that Splinter Cell develop into something like that. I mean, we don't want a Mr. and Mrs. Smith Splinter Cell. But still, Doug Liman is a legitimate talent, and Tom Hardy is certainly a legitimate talent. So you see a video game picture coming together in a very sophisticated, highbrow manner. So hopefully this will only continue. Of course, Michael Fassbender is attached to Assassin's Creed. You have that Sly Cooper, that animated movie based on that Fox video game I recently reviewed a trailer for. So you're starting to see Hollywood turn its attention back to video games. And some of you even asked me that with this choice of Doug Liman, was this the beginning of perhaps a really sophisticated trend in video game movies? And I think that yes, I think that is the case. I think that they've seen what they can do with comic book movies, which were at one point assumed to be only B and C level material. And I think they're seeing that if they apply A-list talent, it creates A-list films. So I think you're seeing that with video games. So it'll be interesting to see who follows in Doug Liman's steps. But he's also had his flops. Jumper. So I wouldn't say that Doug Liman, I wouldn't say he is a guaranteed hit here. I think that the film could go down with him. We'll see. We'll see how Edge of Tomorrow does. I still think they should never have changed that name, the title from All You Need Is Kill. So much cooler. But we'll see. All right, so that's the first director who's been assigned. The second one isn't, they're both, Doug Liman's in talks. Now, this other one is a rumor. Now, the other day, news broke that Ivan Reitman didn't want to make the new Ghostbusters. I don't know if it's so much a reboot as they're just a new generation, and the older actors will play a very small part. But Ivan Reitman had decided, due to the tragic, very sad death of Harold Ramis, that he didn't want to personally revisit the material, and that he would help Sony, again, we're talking about Sony here, look for a replacement. And I didn't really cover it because I was like, big shocker, Ivan Reitman isn't going to direct this. I mean, while he did a great job with the first blockbuster, and he's made his famous films, he's really lost his touch these days, and I just don't think he has the energy or that level of ability. I talk about in my review of Cesar Chavez that filmmakers need to up their game. My review's coming out later this weekend, actually Monday, I think. But I think that Ivan Reitman is someone who's old school Hollywood and hasn't realized that he needs to up his game as a filmmaker. Let's just look at Draft Day as a prime example. That's the latest Ivan Reitman film, and it looks like it should be playing on HBO. So anyway, the reason I'm covering it today, though, is it looks like they might have found their directors, and it's brilliant. I've suddenly become interested in another Ghostbusters film, and that's another thing. I was like, I don't want to revisit this material. The first film got it right. We barely escaped the second film, and how that messed things up. Just leave it alone. Hollywood, come up with something else. I mean, I can understand some of your remakes, but now you're playing with fire because this is a classic. It's almost on the level of remaking like Indiana Jones and such, and we all have we're very touchy about these classic films that are just so perfect. It's like, don't touch it. Stop picking at it. But with this choice, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I suddenly have faith in the project. Now, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are obviously the duo behind Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1, 21 Jump Street, and of course the current Lego Movie, a huge hit. So I think in 22 Jump Street, that's the upcoming project they have. So I think Phil Lord and Chris Miller are a very talented duo. Some people also mentioned when the Ivan Reitman news broke that he wasn't going to do it, that he was stepping down, that Seth Rogen might be a good choice because he did such a good job directing. And I think Seth Rogen and his partner Evan Goldberg did such a good job with This Is the End, which I agree with. I think they would also be a good choice for this, but perhaps maybe a little too raunchy. I think Phil Lord and Chris Miller, maybe that's why Sony's picking them now that I think about it, is that they have a really good sensibility for the family market. I think if Ghostbusters is going to be a 4-quadrant movie, that hits in every demographic, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are the perfect choice. I think Seth Rogen would limit the audience. I mean, look at Neighbors. It looks very funny, but that is a hard R. But I think Phil Lord and Chris Miller could make a Ghostbusters movie that pleased the more adult audience and seemed edgy, but yet still was something you could take a family to. So I think they're a great choice. I have tremendous faith in their choices in terms of their creative choices. I don't think they're studio hacks. I don't think they luck out. I think they really do care about the material, and for that reason they deliver. So suddenly I'm on board a Ghostbusters film. I think they would, and I really like who they cast. I think they really do a good job. So I hope that Sony makes this happen. And I think for Phil Lord and Chris Miller, if they feel they can do it, and nobody knows better than them, if they can find a way to approach this and make it seem fresh and new and still respectful of the original, and not have Bill Murray in a lead role. I mean, who's going to replace Bill Murray in Ghostbusters? I mean, that's a tall order. But if Phil Lord and Chris Miller feel they can do it, I hope that they do, because I think that this is a great feather in their cap, and just shows that they are the franchise go-to guys when it comes to comedy. Watch out, Judd Apatow. Watch out, Seth Rogen. Phil Lord and Chris Miller are really coming up fast. So what do you guys think? Is there any way that you would watch a Ghostbusters, a new film? Are Phil Lord and Chris Miller enough to get you on board, or do you think it's sacred? Don't touch it. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. The viewer question comes from Ryan Rains, who says, "Hi, Grace. I'm kicking off my spring break in the best way by watching Beyond the Trailer. That's awesome. I hope you're having a great spring break. I have a question about what art directors in the movie business really do and their importance to the success of a movie, as I'm considering this as a career option among other things. Please answer this question and have an awesome day. Smiley face." I picked this question not only because it was a very nice request, and I love the smiley faces. As so many of you know, I love getting smiley faces from you guys. But I also think it's really great to shine a light on other parts of the industry that don't often get a lot of attention. I think everyone always is like, oh, I want to be a director or a writer or an actor, unless to a lesser extent a producer, etc., a DP. But there are so many really fascinating, interesting jobs in Hollywood that you can be quite successful at. And for instance, Ryan, a production designer, and I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I think you want to be a production designer. But a production designer, Robert Stromberg, has just upgraded to director for Maleficent. So that's very exciting. So I think that that's one of the reasons I wanted to answer this, is that I always want to encourage people to think outside the box when it comes to what they can do in Hollywood. All right, so art director. An art director used to be in charge of the visual look of a film. That used to be the term. However, it's been changed recently to production designer. For instance, the Oscar used to be Best Art Direction, but they recently changed it to Best Production Design. And that's because a production designer is, I think, the really creative job. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, you might want to be the art director, but an art director is really more of a management role. The art director is responsible for making sure the production designer's choices are implemented, managing the whole art team, making sure everybody knows what they're doing, they're all on the same page. So it's really more of a management position. So I mean, you have to have a background in art, but at the same time, you're not really making those key decisions. Now that's what a production designer does. What a production designer does is they come up with the look of the film. They oversee all of the art, the art departments, from set design, costume design, makeup, all of those things, so that there's a cohesive picture, so that when you see it on screen, it looks like it all matches, and they have to keep everything going in the right direction. Now, of course, they take their cues from the director. It's the director's ultimate decision, but the production designer makes suggestions, will put together pitches for different looks, and also the director is so busy they can't be involved in like every little tiny detail, so the production designer has to take that over, and also will delegate to for instance, your costume designer, your makeup artist, and just, I mean, that's one of the great things and interesting things about working on a movie. Very little ownership, because it filters through so many different people and layers. But a production designer with the director is responsible for coming up with that overall look and implementing it. So it's a really great job, and as you can see, it's beginning to be something that moves into the director's chair and has a tremendous influence on films, particularly today, that are very stylized and production heavy. For instance, Catherine Martin, I believe, Baz Luhrmann's wife, is a production designer. And she has a huge influence on his films, as you can see, and just won a bunch of Oscars for that. So I think it's a really great profession. It's an exciting profession, and you can really see your work literally up on the screen. And I think it's a great career choice, Ryan. And I think I would encourage you to pursue it. So, but not right now. Enjoy your spring break. All right. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Write down below what you'd like to see discussed on Monday, and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching.